Been very little discussion addressing the motivations of Islamism, which is behind the jihadist attacks. At most of the celebrations, they've either been completely devoid, as in New York, they had no religious reference at all, or here yesterday in LA where they had religious reference, but they didn't address the Quranic and Islamic inspiration for global conquest in Islam's name. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the most important thing that we can do is tell the truth. And over the years, I have many people saying, is Islam a threat? And I think the answer is, depends which Islam. The 19 hijackers and their supporters, their food chain, the people who celebrated what they did, and to this day celebrate, they have, I would say, become infected with an ideology which is wrapped in theology, which basically says what they're doing is what Allah wants them to do. To attack that mindset, that counterattack has to come from within Islam. There's not much that the rest of us on the outside looking in can do. And I think when people say that this represents a minority view, we have to take them at their word and also urge them to take the necessary steps. At the same time, take, for example, President Wahid, the late former president of Indonesia, who was honored by the Simon Wiesenthal Center and who actually hosted a multi-faith conference in Bali, which the Wiesenthal Center ran with a number of other groups in the world's largest Muslim country. And unfortunately, a man who passed away at the age of 69, but not just a political leader, but a religious leader who led about 40 million people and who taught them this kind of behavior against anyone is a desecration of God's name, not a sanctification. Those voices, are the ones that have to prevail within Islam. We are bystanders, in a sense. There's not much that we can do. But one thing is for sure, denying, in the case of 9/11, who did it, why they did it, is not going to help in any way minimize the threat. If anything, it kind of confuses things. And, the ongoing challenge is for all of us to understand what's the nature of the threat, who's it coming from, how do we protect ourselves, and how do we make sure that those forces within what's called, I guess, the Ummah, over 1 billion people, are ultimately marginalized. The leadership on that has to come from the Muslim world.
What do you think about the making it taboo to discuss Islamism, political Islam, trying to obfuscate confronting this threat to democracy?
We're here at the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and there are many, many different reasons for why at a particular event, for example, I wouldn't want to mention a particular religion or, want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to emphasize that this was carried out by individuals who don't represent the majority. So it's one thing to want to put a focus on. I think there are differences also theologically. Christianity focusing on forgiveness, etc., and politically wanting to look forward. And I would say also at the core, a very important goal is, I don't think we want to do anything ever that's going to help the Al-Qaedas of the world to recruit more people. The question is, how do we marginalize them? And for those who think by simply not mentioning who did it, in the world of the internet, which the 24/7, these forces are continuing to try to recruit among young Muslims worldwide, that's a prescription for disaster. In terms of the choices made for a particular memorial, event, etc., it's a little bit more complicated. I don't necessarily agree with all the decisions, especially about first responders, that the mayor of New York did. But on the other hand, when you're representing that city, and that city has every single religion and every faction within every one of those religions represented on the streets of New York, you understand that you do not want to create a scenario in which you have people playing out those passions on the street. So while your question is simple, the response to it is really very complicated. For people who are sitting making U.S. policy, to make believe they don't know who did it. I don't think that's the issue here. The drones are active. We're going after, the leaders of Al Qaeda are still around. There's a price in the head of Alawiki in Yemen, etc. And there is obviously a strong effort about coming up with a vocabulary that's going to work. Like, how do you connect up to the moderates? How do you help them prevail in a battle that must be fought within Islam, politically, ideologically, religiously, and spiritually?
Two more questions.